So
I still probably don't understand how this works because I keep setting up my device and it isn't turning on. I always have to go back and sign in. So not for now, but
You can't get to the Zoom meeting from the Mishkon site. I can't. I've been given the code.
yeah, if I had the code, it'd be a lot easier. But no, I have to goop around.
I will give you the code. I'll email it to you.
Thank you.
Friday night and Saturday morning.
also the Thursday Messenger has a link right there.
Yeah, I tried that.
Yeah, it doesn't work for me.
And then you have to use the password, Kevin.
You do.
Yeah, I used the password. I got that. Thank
I
you.
didn't even know the password.
Hey, Carol.
There's Carol. There's Carol with an E.
All right, got it. This is great. I think we have a minion earlier than we normally would have a minion if we were in person.
Right. This is true.
We don't have to travel or get dressed for that.
Actually, 10 o'clock is about the time we usually do get a minion.
All right, it's usually by 10:15 or so we have a minion.
Yeah.
All right, but it's 10:05. So let's get started. I'm going to, if we can mute everybody, I guess I'm going to have everyone other than me. Yes, thank you, Kelly. Okay, so we'll get started. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. If you don't yet have on your talit, if you're going to wear a talit, that would be a good time to check your tzitzit, make sure everything's kosher. And if you're not putting on a talit, you can still just kind of check in on yourself. Make sure you're feeling nice and kosher today. We say the blessing, Lehita Tef Batzitzit. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu mitzvah v'tzivanu lehita tef batzitzit. I've said it a couple times this week, but it's a special Shabbat for me. This is my bar mitzvah parsha, and I guess it's a week though late that my bar mitzvah fell Father's Day weekend, and it was also Rosh Chodesh. But I always like Korach. And then when Rose and I we had our Tanaim ceremony, our engagement ceremony in London, it was also the week of Parshat Korach. So we have a strong connection to this Parsha. That's a good one. So we're going to begin on page 103 with Birkot HaShachar. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan l'sach bibina lavchin ben yom u'ben layla. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani b'tzamo. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani ben chorin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam malbish arumim. So speaking of clothing those who are naked, my mother here, she can attest to this. The clothing that I'm wearing today is very different than the clothing I wore for my bar mitzvah, which was a hideous houndstooth suit with black and white wingtip brogues. Very different look in the early 90s in Cleveland. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokef kifufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam roka aretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasa li kol tzarkihi. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamechin mitzadei daver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ozer Yisrael bigvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam otir Yisrael b'tifara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hanoten leYaif koach. You may be seated. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamevir shana me'anei u'namar yafefai yiratzon l'chanach aleinu v'avatanu sh'targin b'tavim v'anan nisayom v'anan u'nenu hayom b'chol yom l'chen achas rachamim beinecha u'bnei kore'enu v'tiglin chasadim tovim. Baruch atah Adonai chasadim tovim le'amo Yisrael. On page 112. 112. Hayom Shabbat Kodesh Shabo Hayu Halivim Omrim B'Vei Mikdash Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbat Tov Lana Aliyas Hashem Magadu Masachan Tzadik katamar hifrach ke'erez bavanon hisgeshetulim beveit Adonai bechatzrot Eloheinu yafrichu Od yenuvon v'seiva Deshenim v'rananim Yihu lehagid Ki ashar Adonai Tzuri tzuri V'lo avlatavo. Continue on page 120, the Psalm for dedication of a new day. Mizmor Sher Chanachat HaBayit LeDavid, Aramimcha Eilecha Adonai ekra Ve'el Adonai et chanan Eilecha Adonai ekra Ve'el Adonai et chanan Shema Adonai v'choneni Adonai hey ozer li Shema Adonai v'choneni Adonai hey ozer li Eilecha Adonai ekra Ve'el Adonai et chanan Eilecha Adonai ekra Ve'el Adonai et chanan Hafachta misproli Titachta sakita zoni simcha leman yismercha k'vavalo yidom Adonai Elohai leolam odeka. Page 122, Baruch She'amar. Baruch She'amar v'haya ha'olam Baruch hu oseh v'reishit Baruch omer ve'yoseh Baruch gozer umkayim, Baruch merachem al haaretz, Baruch merachem al habriot, Baruch mishalem sachar tov lire'av, Baruch chai la'ad, v'kayam la'netzach, Baruch podeh umatzil, Baruch shemo, Baruch ata Adonai, yam di di dai dai, yam di dai di dai dai, yam di 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 dai dai, ya dai da 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 dai dai, yam dai na 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 na, ya na 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 na, yam na 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 ya na 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 na, ya na 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 ya na ya da 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 dai. Yananai, yananai, Baruch ata Adonai, Melech mehulal batishbachot. You may be seated as we turn to page 136 for Ashrei. Happy are those who are seated in your house. And all of you are seated in your homes. How wonderful is that? It's actually kind of special. It means that your homes are, in a way, right? The home of God, right? This palace of God. Normally we would say this when we're sitting in synagogue, and obviously now everybody's home has become a synagogue. And we'll be curious to see is, do you behave and conduct yourself differently, at least maybe during the 2 hours that you're here on Zoom for services when you're in your home versus the rest of the time? I'll tell you, sometimes I have to transport a Torah in my car for whatever reason. Somebody's borrowing it or has to take it to a sofer. And those times that I have this Torah in my car, I drive completely differently. Even more responsibly than I did when Lev was a newborn and she'd be in the car with me. There's something about having that holy object there in your space. And so just something to be aware of, like, are you conducting yourself any differently now that your home has become this heichal, this palace of God? Continue with Ashrei, page 136. Ashrei Yoshvei Veitecha Od Yehalelucha Od Yehalelucha Ashrei Yoshvei Veitecha Od Yehalelucha Od Yehalelucha Asher Shebitecha Yelelucha Sela Shem Harmim Chanel B'choyim B'vechem Gadol Amen Gadol Shalach Masech Adak Kodav Bezus Nodak Yomim Zachir Chanon B'chom Rayach Tovna Cholach Malchum Masach Yidachim Kavod Machod Chayomim Yeruzach Oleli Nematam V'tav Chod Ma'ala Machotav Machodim B'chol Chimim B'chol Somechan Al Chofim V'zachir Einecha Yisrael Atanotem Lecham B'tav Padech Ekadecha Masmir Chosan Tadei Lenecha Korban Al Chokra B'chol Shekrim Ma'at V'Sanyim Shoman Al Chol V'Av Echol Rishim Yashmin Latan Adei B'Pi V'Recha V'Anachnu Nivarechia Me'ata Ve'ad Olam Hallelujah Hallelujah. Mom, did you get a haircut this week? Oh. Okay. All right. On page 139 for Psalm 148. Page 139. Hallelujah. 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 Hallelujah et Adonai min hashamayim. Hallelujah b'meromim. Hallelujah malachav. Hallelujah kol tzeba'av. Hallelujah shemesh ve'yareach. Hallelujah kol kochvei or. Hallelujah shemei hashamayim v'hamayim asher me'al hashamayim. Yehalelu et Shem Adonai ki hu tziva v'niva'u ve'ya'amidem le'ad le'olam chok natan v'lo ya'avor. Yehalelu et Shem Adonai ki hu tziva v'niva'u ve'ya'amidem le'ad le'olam chok natan v'lo ya'avor. Hallelujah. 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 וירם קרן לימות יהיה ללכות חסידיו לבני ישראל קרובו. Hallelujah. Page 141. Page 141. Hallelujah. 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 B'kodsho. Hallelujah. Birkiauzo. Hallelujah. Vigvurotav. Hallelujah. Kerov gulo. Hallelujah. B'teka shofar. Hallelujah. B'nevel v'chinor. Hallelujah. 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 Betofu macho. Hallelujah. Beminim vugav. Hallelujah. B'tzias le'shama. Hallelujah. B'tzias le'truah. Koan shama tehallelujah. Koan shama tehallelujah. Hallelujah. 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 Baruch Adonai Elohim, Amen v'Amen. Baruch Adonai Mitzion, Shochin Yisrael, Hallelujah. Baruch Elohim, Elohei Yisrael, Aseh Niflad Levado. Baruch Shem Kavod L'Olam, V'Yimalei Kavod Ha'aretz, Amen v'Amen. Vayevarech David Adonai v'Yichol. L'chadnei ha'gdolah, Gvura v'tiferet v'netzach ki chov v'shamim ha'aretz. V'ata Elohim. אתה הוא אדוני לבדך, אדוני עשה שמיים ושמיים ושמיים. אתה הוא אדוני אלוהים אשר בחרת באברהם, ובעצות מאור כסתים, ושמת שמו אברהם, ומצאת את לבבו נאמן לפניך, וחרות עמו הברית לתת הארץ החנאי, החיתי המרי, הפריזי. והים בקעתה לפניהם, ויעברו בתוך הים ביבשה, ואת רודפיהם השלכת במצולו כמו אבן במים עזים. Page 143. ויושע אדוני ביום ההוא את ישראל מיד מצרים, וירא ישראל את מצרים מת על שפת הים, וירא ישראל את היד הגדול אשר עשה אדוני במצרים, ויראו העם את אדוני ויאמינו באדוני ומשה עבדו. The third line, second half of the line. OZ. OZ. V'zimratya vayehi li lishua. Ozi v'zimratya vayehi li lishua. Ozi v'zimratya vayehi li lishua. Ozi v'zimratya vayehi li lishua. le'olam va'ed. Adonai Yimloch le'olam va'ed. Ki l'Adonai hum lacha Moshe barim, va'elu Moshe b'har Tzion lishpot ad har Yisav, va'yita Adonai hum lacha, va'ya Adonai melech chol ha'aretz, va'yom hahu yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo echad. Page 145, Nishmat. Nishmat kol chai, tivarech et shemcha Adonai Eloheinu, v'roch v'asai. ואחד עבדיך הלך למדים ואיפה למעלה ישיר החיים ושנים ותן למריך השם שחייך ותן לפרשותכם לשרי השמיים והקלן לחיות חיי ילד אנחנו מהפסקים מאוד הולך ואיך השם חד לך מבדם בין הטובות אשר עשית ועמנו ותן לגתו לנו וחייב חצנים בבניה ואוכלם משמענו בניה כי בכל השנות לכל פרקת בכל כל מלא פניך לשלח ובכל דבר תהיה ובכל כדבר שעשה היה גדל בכל הנראה היה גדול לשמיים נהלל לך ונשבחך ונברך נברך את שם קודשך כאמור לדוד ברכי את נפשי את אדוני וכל קרבי את שם קודשו האל בתעצומות עוזך הגדול בכבוד שמך הגיבור לנצח והנאור בנאורותיך, המלך היושב על כיסא רם ונישא. On page 147, the middle of the page, Shochenad. Shochenad marom v'kadosh shemo v'chatuv ananu tzadikim b'Adonai la'isharim nava tehila v'fi sharim titalal uvdivrei tzadikim titbarach ובלשון חסידים תתרומם, ובקרב קדושים תתקדש, ובמחלות רבבות עמך בית ישראל, ברינה שכן חובת הלכות, לכן אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו להודות להלל לשבח, לפעיל לברינו להודות לברך, ליל כל חייס, על כל דברי שירה בתשבחות, דוד בן ישי, עבדך משיחך. Page 148, Yishtabach. Yishtabach Shimcha La'ad Malkeinu Ha'el HaMelech HaGadosh HaShamayim Uva'aretz Ki Lecha Na'eh Adonai Eloheinu V'Elohei Avoteinu Shir U'Shvacha Halel Ve'Zimra Oz U'Memshala Netzach גדולה וגבורה, תהילה ותפארת, קדושה ומלכות, ברכות והודאות, מעתה ועד עולם. All our praise we sing unto you, ברכות והודאות, מעתה ועד עולם. All our praise we sing unto you. שיר ושבחה, הלל וזמרה, עוז וממשלה נצח, גדולה וגבורה, תהילה ותפארת, קדושה ומלכות, ברכות והודאות, מעתה ועד עולם. All our praise we sing unto you, brachot v'hodaot me'ata v'yad olam. All our praise we sing unto you. Baruch Atanai HaMelech Gadol b'tishbachot, El ha'odaot, Adon ha'niflaot, Habocher b'shirei zimra, Melech El chei ha'olamim. Give me one moment. Continue on page 150, page 150, as we bless over the new day. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, yotzer or uvorei choshech, osei shalom uvorei et hakol. Hakol yiducha, hakol yotzer. In kirchana Eloheinu b'olam hazeh, v'yen zolcha malkeinu l'chayei ha'olam haba, efes biltcha golem l'mot Mashiach, v'yen domeh lecha, Moshienu l'tchiyat hametim. Trying to think of a fun melody. Let's do a standard melody here. Eladon, page 151. Eladon al kol hamasim baruch umvorach b'fichon neshama godlo v'tuvo malei olam da'at u'tvuna sovevim oto hamitga'el chayot hakodesh v'nedar b'chavod al hamerchava zechut u'mishor lifnei chiso chesed v'rachamim lifnei chevodo Tovim me'orot shebara Eloheinu yitzaram beda'at bevina uvhaskel koach ugvura natan vahem liot moshlim bekerev tehivel meleim zivum fikim nogana ezivam bechol ha'olam smechim b'tzeitam v'sasin bevoam osim behem aritzon konam Pe'er v'chavod notnim lishmot solaverina Zechem malchuto kara l'shemesh v'yizrach or Ra'a v'hitkin surat havana Shevach notnim lo Kol tzeva hamarom Tiferet u'gedula Sirafim ve'ofanim v'chayot hakodesh. I was thinking it'd be fun to do a 4th of July themed melody, and then I realized next Shabbat is actually 4th of July, so we can do lots of fun melodies next Shabbat. But then I was wondering, will people actually be here because it's 4th of July? You got so many other things to do. And then I realized, no, you don't have anything else to do. You're going to be home, so hopefully you'll all still be here next Shabbat too. You can see all this just went through my head in a matter of just a couple seconds. Page 152. We continue silently. So on page 153 at the first red arrow. Kulam aovim, kulam birurim, kulam giborim, v'kulam osim be'ema v'rabatzon konam, v'kulam pochtem behem b'tosha b'tohora, v'shira v'zimra, u'marchim shavchim farim, u'maritzim, u'makdishim, u'mamlechim, et shem ha'el ha'melech, ha'gadol v'ha'gibor, ha'nora kadosh hu, v'kulam mekablim alehem, O malchut shamayim ze mizeh, v'notnim reshut ze lazeh, lakdish v'lasam b'nachat ruach, v'safa b'rav v'nimah, kudosha kolam kechad onim v'yomrim v'yirah. Kadosh, 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 Adonai tzvaot, maloch ol haaretz kevodo. V'ofanim v'chayot hakodesh, b'rash gadol, mitnasim l'umat serafim, Lumatam mishavchim v'yomrim Baruch v'od Adonai mimkomo li'al baruch nimeitenu L'melech ha'chava Poel l'urot oseh charashot ba'melch matzaret tzekot matzbek v'shua b'ret ufrod No v'atilot Adon ha'niflaot ha'mechadesh b'cholim Zebereshit mor le'osim Or chadash Atzion ta'ir or chadash Atzion ta'ir or chadash Atzion ta'ir v'nizkeh chulanu meheira le'oro or chadash Atzion ta'ir or chadash על ציון תאיר. אור חדש על ציון תאיר, ונזכה כולנו מהרה לאורו. ברוך אתה אדוני יוצר המאורות. Page 154, אהבה רבה. אהבה רבה אהבתנו, אדוני אלוהינו, חמלה גדולה ויתרה חמלת עלינו. אבינו מלכנו, בעבור אבותינו, שבטחו בך, אבינו מלכנו. ותלמדם חוקי חיים, כן תכוננות למדנו, אבינו האב הרחמן, המרחם רחם עלינו. ותן בליבנו להבין ולהשכיל לשמוע, ללמוד וללמד, לשמור ולעשות, ולקיים את כל דברי תלמוד תורתך באהבה. והאר עינינו בתורתך, ודבק ליבנו במצוותיך, ויחד לבבינו לאהבה וליראה את שמך, ולא נבוש לעולם ועד, ולא נבוש לעולם ועד, כי בשם קודשך הגדול והנורא בטחנו, נגילה ונשמחה בישועתך. Gather for tzitzit as we say V'havienu and prepare ourselves for Shema. V'havienu l'shalom me'arba kanfot haaretz, v'tolichenu komemiyot le'artzenu, כי אל פועל ישועות אתה, ובנו בחרת מכל עם ולשון, וקרבתנו לשמך הגדול, סלע באמת, להודות לך, וליחדך באהבה. ברוך אתה אדוני, הבוחר במו ישראל באהבה. Page 155 for the Shema. El Melech Ne'eman. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך. והיה אם שמות תשמעו אל מצוותי, אשר אנוכי מצווה אתכם היום, לאהבה את אדוני אלוהיכם, ולעבדו בכל לבבכם ובכל נפשכם, נתתי מטר ארצכם בעתו יורה ומלקוש, ויאספת דגניך ותירשך ויצריך, נתתי עשה בשדך להמתך, ואכלת ושבעת, הישמרו לכם, פן יפתה לבבכם, וזרתם, בראתם אלוהים אחרים, והישחוויתם להם, ורעף אדוני בכם, ועצר את השמיים ולא יהיה מטר, והאדמה לא תיתן את יבולה, ורבתם מהרה מעל הארץ הטובה, אשר אדוני נותן לכם, ושמתם את דברי אלה על לבבכם ועל נפשכם, וקשרתם אותם לאות על ידכם, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניכם, למדתם אותם את בניהם לדבר בם, בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וכתבתם על מזור ביתך ובשעריך, למען ירבו ימיכם וימי בניהם, על האדמה אשר נשבע אדוני לאבותיכם לתת להם, כי מהשמיים על הארץ. ויאמר אדוני אל משה לאמור, דבר אל בני ישראל ואמרת עליהם, ועשו להם ציצית על כנפי בניהם לדורתם, ונתנו על ציצית הכנף בצל תכלת, והיה לכם לציצית. וראיתם אותו, וזכרתם את כל מצוות אדוני, ועשיתם אותם, ולא תטורו אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם, אשר אתם זונים אחריהם, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם אלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם. מביא יציב נכון וקיים. Page 157 at the arrow. לדור ודור הוא קיים ושמו קיים, וכיסו נכון מלכותו ואמתו ליד קיימת, ודבריו חיים וקיימים, נחמדים נחמדים לעד, ולא מעולמים, kiss and release our ציצית, על אבותינו ולא יעבור. אמת שתהו אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, מלכנו מלך אבותינו, גואלנו גואל אבותינו, יוצרנו יוצר שורתנו, פודנו מצילנו מעולם שמך, אין אלוהים זולתך. עזרת אבותינו אתה הוא מעולם, מגן משה עליהם, אחריהם בכל דור ובדור. ברום בעולם אשר איש נשמע מצוותך, תורה דעת למלך ישים על ליבו, אמת הוא לאדון עמך, מלך יבור בריבם, אמת הוא ראשון ואתה הוא אחרון, מלדך אין לנו מלך אל מושיע. Page 158 at the first red arrow, 158. Tehilo le'elyon baruch hu umvorach Moshe uvnei Yisrael lecha anu shira ve'simcha rava ve'amru chulam mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai mi kamocha Nedar b'kodesh nura tehilo tosefele shira chadasha shibchu geulim leheshimcha al sefat hayam yachad kulam hodu v'imlichu ve'amru Adonai himloch le'olam va'ed Yam dai 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 Yam di dai 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 Tzor Yisrael kuma ve'ezrat Yisrael Uvtechunu mecha Yuda ve'Yisrael Go aleinu Adonai tzavaot shemo Kedosh Yisrael Baruch atah Adonai Gal Israel. The Amidah is on page 159. We will recite it together. Not obviously, but we'll skip the Kedusha and we just continue saying everything together. On page 159. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagi tehilatecha Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor V'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'Konei Hakol V'Zocher Chasdei Avot U'Mevi Goel Livnei B'neihem L'Ma'an Shemo B'Yahava Melech Ozer Moshiach U'Magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechayim Metim Atah Rabba Hoshia Mechalkel Chayim Bechesed Mechayim Metim Berachamim Rabim Zomech Noflim Berofei Cholim Umatir Asurim Umekayem emunato lishenei afar Michal mocha ba'al gevurot Umido melach Melech memit umechaye Umatzmiach Yeshua V'neman atah lechayot metim Baruch atah Adonai Mechaye hametim Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh u'ketoshim b'chol yom mehaluch hasela Baruch atah Adonai ha'el hakadosh Yismach Yismach Moshe v'matnat chelko Ki even ne'eman Ki even ne'eman Ki even ne'eman karata lo Ki even ne'eman, ki even ne'eman, ki even ne'eman karata lo. Kli tiferet, tiferet, berosho natata, be'omdo lefanecha, al har Sinai. Yismach, Yismach Moshe, v'matnat chelko, Ki even ne'eman, ki even ne'eman, ki even ne'eman karata lo. Ki even ne'eman, ki even ne'eman, ki even ne'eman karata lo. U'shnei luchot avanim hored biyado. V'chatuv bahem shmirat Shabbat, shmirat Shabbat. Yismach, Yismach Moshe, v'matnat chelko. Ki even ne'eman, ki even ne'eman, ki even ne'eman karata lo. Ki even ne'eman, ki even ne'eman, ki even ne'eman karata lo. V'chein katuv b'toratecha. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם ידי ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ וביום השביעי שבת וינפש. ולא נתתו אדוני אלוהינו לגויי הארצות ולא הנחלתו מלכנו לעובדי פסלים וגם במנוחתו לא ישכנו ערלים כי לישראל עמך נתת באהבה זרע יעקב אשר בם בחרת מקדשי שבי כולם יצאו ויתעמדו מטובך והשביעי פציצה בו וקידשתו Bendet Yamimoto Karata Zecher L'Maaseh Bereshit Zecher L'Maaseh Bereshit Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu V'tzei b'mnuchatenu Kahachenu b'mit. Let me start that over again. Sorry. Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu, V'tzei b'mnuchatenu Kahachenu b'mitzvotecha, V'ten chalkenu b'toratecha. Savenu mituvecha, V'samchenu b'shuatecha. V'taher libeinu li'avdecha be'emet v'hanchilenu Adonai Eloheinu v'ahava uv'ratzon Shabbat kodshecha v'anuchu v'Yisrael Mekadeshei shemecha Baruch atah Adonai, Nekadesh HaShabbat. Ritzei Adonai Eloheinu b'yamcha Yisrael tfilatam, Hashevet avadir b'betecha ishe Yisrael tfilatam b'avatik b'ratzon, V'hilatzon hamid avodat Yisrael amecha, Betecha zene enene b'shuvcha l'tzon b'rachamim, Baruch atah Adonai, Hamachazir shkinato l'tzion, Modim anachnu lach, shatahu Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu le'olam va'ed. Sur chayenu magin ishenu atahu ledor v'ador. Nodeh lecha nusapir tzilatecha, al chayenu hamsirvidim biyadecha, v'anishvotenu hakidolach, v'anisecha shebechol yom imanu, v'aniflotecha v'tovatecha shebechol eit. Erev boker tzohorayim. Atov ki lo. Chalu rachamecha v'hamerachem ki lo tamu atov ki lo chalu rachamecha v'hamerachem ki lo tamu chasadecha me'olam kivinu lach ve'olam kivinu lach ki lo tamu chasadecha me'olam kivinu lach me'olam kivinu lach V'al kulam yiparach v'shomam shemcha makenu tamid le'olam va'ed v'chol hayim v'ducha sela v'alu shemcha v'emet ha'el yishotenu ezratenu sela Baruch atah Adonai hatov shemcha ulecha na'ed lehodot Sim shalom Sim shalom tova uvracha ba'olam Sim shalom tova uvracha Chen v'chesed v'rachamim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael amecha V'archenu avinu kulanu ke'echad v'yor panecha Sim shalom tova uvracha ba'olam Sim shalom tova uvracha Ki ba'or panecha natata lanu Adonai Eloheinu Torat chaim ve'ahavat chesed u'tzedaka u'bracha ve'rachamim v'chaim v'shalom Sim shalom tova uvracha ba'olam Sim shalom tova uvracha טוב בעיניך לברך את עמך, עמך ישראל, בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. שים שלום טובה וברכה בעולם. שים שלום טובה וברכה. And I just realized I missed the middle part, so I'm just going to daven Sim Shalom. Sim Shalom ba'olam tova l'bracha, v'chein v'ches rachim b'neicha, v'chein v'ches rachim aleinu v'kol Yisrael amecha, barcheinu avinu kulanu ke'echad be'or panecha, ki be'or panecha natat lanu anayaleinu, tvoid chaim v'avad chedet, v'tlacha bracha, v'chaim v'shalom, v'tov b'neicha l'varech et amcha Yisrael b'chol eit v'chol sha'a b'shlomecha, Baruch ata Adonai, ha'mavarech et amo Yisrael v'shalom. Elohai Nitzor Shani Mira, Usadaptai Midaber Mirma, Kakala Nefshi Tigum, Vanashi Kafar Lechotia, Patach Levi Bertortecha, Umi Tortecha Tirdof Nashi, Hol Hoshim Nelaira, Mehira Hafar Atstam, Kaka Makshvatam, Asen Mashmecha, Asen Mamnecha, Asen Makashlecha, Asen Mantortecha, Lamanicha Tsugidecha, Oshia Yemincha, Yeneni. You let turn imi behegoni be lefanecha a night to go ali. O say shalom romav, hu ya say shalom, aleni v'kol Yisrael imru. Amen. O say shalom b'romav, hu ya say shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Ve'imru amen. O say shalom b'romav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Ve'imru amen. Yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. 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 Shabbat shalom, everybody. So as we're keeping things, confined here to Zoom and just Mishkon.org's live stream page, it's a bit more of community feeling here. I want to make it a bit more engaging and interactive. So we're getting ready to receive Torah. And normally when we'd be receiving Torah, if it were in shul, we'd be doing a processional with the Sefer Torah. And that'd be the perfect time for everybody to kind of chit-chat and say, hey, what's going on? And turn to their neighbors and just check in. And so I want to make this an opportunity for us to be able to recreate that sense of community as we are getting ready to receive Torah. So if you want to do so, if you're feeling comfortable to do so, you can unmute yourself, just say like one or two words. Let us know kind of where you're at, just a little check-in. If you're feeling good, if you're really tired, maybe, a little under the weather, hopeful, sad, whatever it might be. Just a little check-in. So feel free to unmute yourself, and hopefully we don't all talk at the same time, but just go slowly and respectfully. Anybody, feel free to unmute yourself.
Frederica's getting over her shingle shot. She just really wiped me out.
Oh, yeah. I had a diagnostic procedure that was just routine, but it was a little scary for me, but everything turned out fine. And I wanted to tell you, Rabbi, that when I was repeating my various mantras and such to calm myself down, some of the chanting that you do for our Torah service kind of circulated. So it was like you were a little angel on my shoulder as I was going through that.
I'm glad I could be there with you. others.
Who did you think had a haircut, Rabbi?
I thought my mother had a haircut.
Oh.
It was a couple weeks ago. We've FaceTimed with her since. I just didn't notice. Hi, Leslie. Anyone else have?
We're very happy to be up here in Mammoth Lakes in the beautiful Sierra Nevada mountains, and happy to be joining this minyan.
Yay. Well,
Question, where are you staying? My daughter and I go to Mammoth. We usually stay in a cabin every summer for the last 25 years, fishing.
Wow, how nice! We have a townhouse here, and we've been spending quite a lot of time here the last couple of years. We're in Winterset, which is on Meridian in the middle of town.
Cool.
And I'm home, but my background is as you enter Big Sur, the flowers as you enter Big Sur.
Wow, beautiful.
In fact, my background screen is one of the places in Mammoth that my daughter and I fish. I won't tell you where it is. It's very secret.
Jaime, I'll tell you, I actually just ordered a rod and reel combo for myself and for Lev, and she just got her sleeping pad and sleeping bag this week. So I'm taking her out camping and fishing next week, and then in a few weeks, the three of us are going to go camping and hiking. So,
Don't wear white when you go fishing.
What's that? Don't wear white?
Right.
Why?
Fish will see you. You have to wear green or brown.
Oh, okay.
It's like the screen for Zoom.
It's just like Maryland. Anybody else want to check in? Just let us know how you're doing.
I'm glad to be here this week. I missed last week, and I thought of you all, and I feel like I'm right back where I belong this Shabbos. So I'm glad to see everybody there. See everybody.
Good to have you, Marley.
I'm just glad it's Shabbos.
Hashem.
yeah.
Good. All right. Well, we'll everybody have opportunity to be able to share more. When we share simchas, if there's anything you want to share at that time, of course, we'll be able to share those who you're holding in your heart this Shabbat when we get to the Misha Berachs in a little bit. But first, we have to hear some Torah, and we're very lucky. We are going to have it declaimed this Shabbat by, now, David, correct me, is it Rabbi Doctor or Doctor Rabbi?
I've heard it as Rabbi Doctor.
Rabbi Doctor. That's a more Jewish way to go.
I think the proper term is Ish.
You must have reread a lot of his dissertation and whatnot over the years and months. So we're very lucky to have David reading Torah for us this Shabbat. As I mentioned earlier, it is Parshat Korach this Shabbat. The reading was posted at the website and split down by all the different aliyot. So if you were able to grab that, wonderful. But if you're following along in a Chumash, we are in the book of Numbers, chapter 16, verse 1. So book of Numbers, chapter 16.
Page 860.
So chapter 16, verse 1. And I'm going to go silent. If everybody else, it looks like everybody else is silent as well. And David, we'll let you.
To the host, is it possible for me to share my screen?
Let me check. Hold on.
Okay.
That's one of the settings in share screen is you can allow all participants to share.
Okay. Got it. Thank you. How's that, Rabbi David, Doctor?
Okay, let's see if that works. It should, okay. So what I think I will do is read, is declaim a piece, the Aliyat section, and then read a translation that is somewhat of a mixture of my own and the JPS and Robert Alter, just to give another perspective on the text. And what we're facing here is a situation where there are several challenges to the authority of Moses and Aaron from inside the Israelite community. I think it would be very difficult to be an Israelite and understand that God has chosen a couple of people to be agents of the divine will, and that difficulty seems to have made the Israelites, or some of them, very uncomfortable. And the challengers are coming from a number of different directions and are presented in the story in such a way that they seem to be all coming at the same time from these different directions. One is from Moses' first cousin, Korach, one of his first cousins, and as well as from the members of the tribe of Reuven, which is the firstborn of Jacob, and therefore I think they consider themselves to be the natural leaders of the people, sort of by rights, and wondering like how it is that Moses got the job. So I will begin with your indulgence. Vayikach Korach ben Yitzhar ben Kahat ben Levi, ben Datan v'Aviram b'nei Eliav, ve'on ben Pelet b'nei Reuven. Vayakumu lifnei Moshe v'anashim mi b'nei Yisrael 50 u 200. Excuse me. Nisiei Eda kri'ei moed anshe Shem. Vayikahalu al Moshe v'al Aharon vayomeru alehem. Rav lachem ki chol ha'eda kulam kadoshim. Uvtocham Adonai. Umadua titnasu al kahal Yisrael, kahal Adonai. Now Korach, son of Yitzhar, son of Kahat, son of Levi, took up, along with Datan and Aviram, sons of Eliav, and On, son of Pelet, descendants of Reuven, and they rose before Moses, together with some 250 Israelites, community chieftains chosen in the assembly, men of fine reputations. They assembled against Moses and Aaron and said to them, "You have too much, for all the community are holy, all of them. Adonai is in their midst. Why should you raise yourselves above Adonai's congregation?" Vayishma Moshe vayipol al panav, vaydaber el Korach ve'el kol adato lemor, boker, V'yoda Adonai et asher lo, ve'et kado hakadosh, ve'hikriv elav, ve'et asher yivchar bo, yakriv elav. Zot asu, k'chu lachem machtot, Korach v'chol adato, utnu vahen esh, v'simu alehen ketoret, lifnei Adonai, machar, ve'haya, Ha'ish asher yivchar Adonai hu hakadosh. Rav lachem b'nei Levi. When Moses heard this, he fell on his face. Then he spoke to Korach and all his company, saying, "In the morning Adonai will make known who is God's and who is holy, and will grant direct access. The one who has been chosen will be granted access. Do this. You, Korach, and all your band, take fire pans, and place fire in them, and put incense on them before Adonai tomorrow. Then the participant whom Adonai chooses, he shall be the Holy One. You have too much, sons of Levi." Vayomer Moshe el Korach, Shim'u na b'nei Levi, Ham'at mikem, Ki hivdil Elohei Yisrael etchem me'adat Yisrael, lahakriv etchem elav, la'avod et avodat Mishkan Adonai, v'la'avod lifnei ha'eda l'sharatam. V'yakrev otecha et kol achecha b'nei Levi, איתך, וביקשתם גם כהונה. לכן אתה וכל עדתך הנועדים על אדוני, ואהרון מהו כי תלינו עליו. וישלח משה לקרוא לדתן ולאבירם בני אליאב, ויאמרו לא נעלה, המעט כי העליתנו מארץ זבת חלב ודבש להמיתנו במדבר, כי תשתרר עלינו גם השתרר. Moses further said to Korach, "Hear me, sons of Levi. Is it too little for you that the God of Israel divided you from the community of Israel and has given you direct access to do the work of Adonai's tabernacle and to stand before the community to serve them? God has advanced you and all your brothers, the sons of Levi, with you. Will you seek the priesthood as well? Actually, you and all your company have banded together against Adonai. And Aaron, what is he that you should murmur against him?" Moses sent for Datan and Abiram, sons of Eliab. But they said, "We will not go up. Is it too little that you brought us from a land flowing with milk and honey to put us to death in the wilderness, that you should actually also lord it over us?" Af lo el eretz zavat chalav udvash haviu otanu, vatiten lanu nachalat sadeh v'charem. Ha'enei ha'anashim hahem tinaker, lo na'aleh. Vayichar leMoshe me'od, vayomer el Adonai, al tefen el minchatam. Lo chamor echad mehem nasati, velo hareoti et echad mehem. Vayomer Moshe el Korach, Ata vechol adatecha heyu lifnei Adonai. Ata vehem ve'aron machar. Ukchu ish machtato untatem aleihem ketoret. V'hikravtem lifnei Adonai ish machtato 50 ו-200 מחטות. ואתה ואהרון איש מחטתו. ויקחו איש מחטתו ויתנו עליהם אש וישימו עליהם קטורת. ויעמדו פתח אוהל מועד, ומשה ואהרון. ויקהל עליהם קורח את כל העדה אל פתח אוהל מועד. וירח כבוד אדוני אל כל העדה. Back to verse 14. What's more, to a land flowing with milk and honey you have not brought us, nor given us an estate of fields and vineyards. Would you gouge out the eyes of those involved? We will not go up. Moses was very incensed, and he said to Adonai, "Don't turn to their offering. I haven't taken from them even a single donkey, nor have I harmed even one of them." Then Moses said to Korach, "You and all your company appear before Adonai, you and they and Aaron, tomorrow. Each of you take your fire pan and lay incense on it, and each of you bring that fire pan before Adonai, 250 fire pans. You and Aaron also bring your fire pans." They each took their fire pan, placed fire in it, put incense on it, and they stood at the entrance of the tent of meeting with Moses and Aaron. Korach assembled all the community against them by the entrance of the tent of meeting. Then Adonai's glory began to communicate with the whole community. Verse 20. Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe el Haron lemor. Hibadelu mitoch ha'edah hazot ve'achale otam keraga. Vayipelu al peneihem vayomeru. El Elohei haruchot lechol basar ha'ish echad yechata ve'al kol ha'edah tikzof. Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe lemor. דבר אל העדה לאמור, העלו מסביב למשכן קורח, דתן ואבירם. ויקום משה, וילך אל דתן ואבירם, וילכו אחריו זקני ישראל. וידבר אל העדה לאמור, סורו נא מעל אוהלו האנשים הרשעים האלה, ואל תיגעו בכל אשר להם, פן תסיפו בכל חטאותם. ויעלו מעל משכן קורח, דתן ואבירם מסביב. ודתן ואבירם יצאו ניצבים, פתח אוהליהם. ונשיהם ובניהם וטפם. ויאמר משה, בזאת תדעון כי אדוני שלחני לעשות את כל המעשים האלה, כי לא מליבי. אם כמות כל האדם ימותון האלה, ופקודת כל האדם ייפקד עליהם, לא אדוני שלחני. ואם בריאה יברא אדוני, ופצתם האדמה את פיה, ובלעה אותם, ואת כל אשר להם, וירדו חיים שאולה, וידעתם כי ניאצו האנשים האלה את אדוני. ויהי ככלותו לדבר את כל הדברים האלה, ותיבקע האדמה אשר תחתיהם. ותפתח הארץ את פיה, ותבלע אותם ואת בתיהם. את כל הרכוש. וירדו הם וכל אשר להם חיים שאולה. ותכס עליהם הארץ, ויאבדו מתוך הקהל. וכל ישראל אשר סביבותיהם נסו לכל עם. כי אמרו, פן תבלענו הארץ. ואש יצאה מאת אדוני, ותאכל את 50 ו200 איש מקריבי הקטורת. Back to verse 20. Adonai spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, divide yourselves from this community, and I will put an end to them in an instant. But they fell on their faces and said, O God, source of the spirits for all flesh, when one member sins, will you rage against the whole community? Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the community and say, move up from around the dwelling of Korach, Datan, and Abiram. Moses rose and went to Datan and Abiram, the elders of Israel, after him. He spoke to the community, saying, turn away from the tents of these guilty parties and touch nothing of theirs, lest you be swept away in all their offense. So they moved up from the dwelling of Korach, Datan, and Abiram, from all around. Now Datan and Abiram had come out, poised at the entrance of their tents, with their wives, their children, and their other dependents. And Moses said, by this you shall know that it was Adonai who sent me to do all these deeds, that they are not from my own heart. If these people's death is that of all humankind, if their lot is humankind's common fate, it was not Adonai who sent me. But if Adonai brings about a new thing, so that the ground gapes open its mouth and swallows them up with all that belongs to them, and they go down alive into Sheol, you shall know that those involved have despised Adonai. And it happened, just as he finished speaking all these words, the ground under them split apart, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up with their households, and all Korach's people and their possessions. They went down, with all that belonged to them, alive to Sheol. The earth covered over them, and they perished from the midst of the assembly. All Israel around them fled at the sound of them, for they said, the earth might swallow us. Meanwhile, a fire had gone out from Adonai and consumed the 250 participants in the offering of incense. Chapter 17. Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe lemor, Emor el Elazar ben Aharon HaKohen, vayarem et hamachtot mi ben hasrefa, ve'et ha'esh zrehalla, ki kadeshu. Et machtot hachataim ha'ele benafshotam, ve'asu otam reku'e fachim, tzipui lamizbeach. Ki hikrivum lifnei Adonai vayikdashu, vayeyu laot livnei Yisrael. Vayikach Elazar HaKohen ve'et machtot hanechoshet asher hikrivu hasrufim. Vayirakum tzipui lamizbeach. Zikaron livnei Yisrael lama'an asher lo yikrav ish zar asher lo mizera Aharon hu lehaktir ketoret lifnei Adonai velo yeh chakorach v'cha'adato ka'asher diber Adonai b'yad Moshe lo. Vayilonu kol adat b'nei Yisrael mi macharat al Moshe v'al Aharon lemor. Atem hamitem et ami Adonai. Vayihi kahel ha'eda al Moshe v'al Aharon, vayifnu el ohel moed, v'hine chisahu ha'anan vayerach vod Adonai. Vayavo Moshe v'Aharon el pnei ohel moed. Back to the start of the chapter. Adonai spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, Order Eleazar, son of Aaron the priest, to remove the fire pans, for they have become sacred, from among the charred remains, and scatter the coals abroad. Remove the fire pans of those who have sinned at the cost of their lives, and let them be made into hammered sheets as plating for the altar, for once they have been used for offering to Adonai, they have become sacred, and let them serve as a warning to the people of Israel. Eleazar the priest took the copper fire pans which had been used for offering by those who died in the fire, and they were hammered into plating for the altar, as Adonai had ordered him through Moses. It was to be a reminder to the Israelites so that no outsider, not one of Aaron's offspring, should presume to offer incense before Adonai and suffer the fate of Korach and his band. Next day, the whole Israelite community railed against Moses and Aaron. You too have brought death upon Adonai's people. But as the community gathered against them, Moses and Aaron turned toward the tent of meeting. The cloud had covered it, and the presence of Adonai appeared. Moses and Aaron reached the tent of meeting. The last piece for today, starting with verse 9. Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe lemor, Heiromu mitoch ha'eda hazot ve'achale otam karaga, vayipolu al pneihem. Vayomer Moshe el Aharon, Kach et hamachta v'ten aleha esh me'al hamizbeach v'sim ketoret v'holech mehera el ha'eda v'chaper alehem ki yatsa ha'ketzef milifnei Adonai heichel ha'nagef. Vayikach Aharon ka'asher diber Moshe vayaratz el toch ha'kahal v'hinei heichel ha'negef ba'am. Vayiten et haketoret vayichaper al ha'am. Vayamod ben hametim uvein hachayim. Vateatzer hamagefa. Vayeyu hametim bamagefa 14,000 ו700 מלבד המתים על דבר קורח. Vayashov Aharon el Moshe el Petach Ohel Moed v'hamagefa ne'etzara. Back to verse 9. Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, "Remove yourselves from this community, that I may annihilate them in an instant." They fell on their faces. Then Moses said to Aaron, "Take the fire pan, put on it fire from the altar, add incense, and take it quickly to the community, and make expiation for them. For wrath has gone forth from Adonai, the plague has begun." Aaron took it as Moses had ordered, and ran to the midst of the congregation where the plague had begun among the people. He put on the incense and made expiation for the people, and he stood between the dead and the living until the plague was checked. Those who died of the plague came to 14,700, aside from those who died on account of Korah. Aaron then returned to Moses at the entrance of the tent of meeting, since the plague was checked.
Kol hakavod. Toda rabah, Rabbi Doctor. A lot of people dying in a plague. Makes us think a little bit about what's going on here. We have, sadly, way too many people who are ill. And speaking of which, we're going to say a Misha Berach now, prayer for all those in need of healing. So if there's anybody in your life in need of some healing this Shabbat, I invite you just to kind of raise your hand by your face, and I will call on you. At that point, you can unmute yourself and share with us the names of loved ones that you are holding in your heart this Shabbat, those in need of some healing. And of course, as we're reading about record-breaking numbers all around the country of new people contracting COVID, and in Israel, they said there were 500 new cases this week, and all of them were people over the age of 80. We want everybody to be safe and healthy, and of course all those who are providing care to be safe and strengthened in their work. Misha Berach Avotenu Abraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov v'imotenu Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah hu yivarech v'yarpeh et hacholim. Jeff, unmute yourself. You gotta unmute yourself, Jeff.
My father fed mine.
Kevin, unmute yourself, please.
And Bruce and Jill Cole.
My wife, Mount Gosha, and my colleague, Dr. Rastigar.
Carol Felixson.
My aunt Hope and Flora, my friend Amy Davis, and Rick and Lois.
Carol Stein, you had your hand up?
My coworker Heidi Nye and my beloved former brother-in-law Meade Martin, who's got a very early stage pancreatic cancer.
Sue.
Unmute. Sorry. Jean Alper, Hannah Rivka Batovalea, my sister who has stage 4 pancreatic cancer, Bruce and Jill Kobritz, Carol and Lauren Zisman.
Lenny.
Hannah Rivka bat Avraham v'Malka.
Rena, I don't see you now, but you had your hand up.
Yes. Elka Bela bat Hadassah, Hannah bat Aliza, Avram ben Aliza, Hannah Rivka bat Tova Leah, Elimelech ben Sarah, and Candace Shikai, a young student of mine who has shingles, which is not a good thing for young people to have.
Okay. Anyone else? Yehudit bat Esther, and Yosef ben Rivka, Moshe Yafeh ben Rachel, Rachelea bat Sarah, Raphael ben Chemda, Gior ben Safra, Avraham ben Eliyahu, Kinneret bat Zipporah, Hannah bat Nomi, and Rivka Esther bat Ita. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yimalei Rachamim Aleichem, Lachzikam U'Lapautam Lishlach Lehem Mehera Ufra Shleiman bin Hashmayim, Ufot HaNefesh Ufot HaGuf B'toch Sha'ar Cholim, V'chazek Et Yedei Oskim B'tzorchechem. Shabbat hi milizok u'refuah krova lavo. Hashab aglav izman kariv v'nomar amen. Refuah shlema, may everybody in need receive a full and speedy recovery. We all say amen. All right, so David gave us a very wonderful introduction and an explanation of the parsha as we're reading along, but I'm going to focus on the same section. I'm going to go a little bit, slightly different direction in it, though. With all the protests that have been happening lately, a lot of Jewish leaders have been turning to our texts to find sources to support this holy and important work. The Talmud is actually filled with stories and directives which make the imperative to speak up quite clear. However, a growing number of individuals have been turning to the story of Korach. They believe that our tradition has wrongfully abused the memory of these rebels, and they claim that Moses was in the wrong for shutting down their protest. To these colleagues of mine, Moses represents the established authority, while Korach, Datan, Abiram, and On, along with the 250 rebels, they represent those who are taking to the streets to challenge our current power structures. While this attempt of my colleagues to reinterpret the text is noble in its aim, I believe that they are completely wrong. And I believe that they lack a true understanding of what is happening, both within the text as well as how it may relate to today's protests. First, we must look closely at what Korach and the rebels are actually demanding. In chapter 16, verse 3, Korach actually says to Moses and Aaron, Rav lechem, ki chol ha'eda kulam kedoshim, u'betocham Adonai. Umadua titnas'u al kahal Adonai. You have gone too far, for all of the community are holy, and God is amongst them. Why do you lord yourselves over the assembly of God? So what exactly are they protesting? In short, they don't like the fact that Moses and Aaron are in charge, or how they're going about running the place. But that doesn't really paint the whole picture. So let's take a closer look at who Korach actually is. As David pointed out, Korach comes from the clan of Kahat. And Kahat had 4 sons. The oldest son was Amram, the father of Moses and Aaron. The second oldest son was Yitzhar. Yitzhar, his oldest son, was Korach, which makes him Moses and Aaron's first cousin. And Kahat's youngest son, the third was Chevron, but the youngest son was a son named Uziel. And Uziel's middle son was named Elitzaphan, which is important. According to the Midrash, Korach was upset that Moses and Aaron appointed their cousin Elitzaphan to oversee the sons of Kahat. So as Amram, Moses and Aaron's father, was the firstborn, it makes sense that they, Moses and Aaron, would have been the first to take the leadership role over the clan of Kahat. But with Aaron and his sons serving as the Kohanim, and with Moses as the political and spiritual leader of all of Israel, it would only make sense for the firstborn of the next oldest son to lead the sons of Kahat. And that would be Korach. Elitzaphan, who was selected, wasn't even the firstborn of his father, whom he himself was the youngest born of the 4 sons. We can understand what Korach's complaint is here. But what about the other rebels? Why were they protesting? According to Chizkuni, they too were fighting against this lineage decision. Datan, Aviram, and On all come from the tribe of Ruvain. And Ruvain, as David pointed out, was the eldest son of Jacob. All the other rebels were considered Nisi'ei Edah, heads of clans, which means that they were the 250 eldest sons from the different tribes. As firstborn sons, they believed they should be the ones in charge. Moses and Aaron come from the tribe of Levi, but Reuven was the eldest. Even amongst the sons of Levi, Gershon was even older than Kahat. And to top it all off, Moses chooses Joshua as his spiritual successor. Joshua, the son of Nun, who comes from the tribe of Ephraim. Ephraim, who is the younger son of Joseph, and Joseph, who is the youngest of all the brothers except for Benjamin. we can start to understand why they have some gripes here. But when the rebels say that all of the community is holy, it's important to note that they're not talking about the entire community of Israel. They're talking about the entire community of chieftains. That is, they believe that any one of them has just as much of a claim to the seat of power as in Moses and Aaron. Forgetting the fact that God chose them, right? If you're going based on a system of lineage, they believe they all have even a stronger claim. In other words, these rebels weren't calling for a movement of the people. They were calling to dismantle this new system of power succession, a system which uprooted the old system based on birth order in favor of succession based on merit. Kli Yakar explains the rebellion even further. The Torah describes the rebels as Anshe Shem, or men of a good name or a good repute. Kli Yakar claims that they were worried about losing their status under this new merit-based system of succession. Being firstborn no longer means anything. So they were worried about losing their standing. Once we understand this bigger picture of Korach and the other rebels, this uprising stops looking like a movement of the people, like what we're seeing in the streets today. And it starts looking a lot more like a bunch of good old boys clinging on to the memory of a bygone era. An era which is rooted in a system which benefited them for no reason other than being born to the right person at the right time. Korach and his comrades aren't the forebearers to today's Black Lives Matter protesters. They are the spiritual progenitors of the Dixiecrats and those who want to make America great again. Just because you're a rebel doesn't necessarily mean that you are fighting the good fight. After all, the Dixie flag is also known as the rebel flag, and proudly called that. This is precisely why the Torah paints them in such a bad light. Those who follow Korach, Datan, Aviram, and On are given a choice. Learn from your mistakes and distance yourself from these rebels, or go down with them. Of course, many do choose to distance themselves, but Korach and the other leaders and their families, along with the 250 good old boys, all perish, either swallowed whole by the earth or consumed by God's fire. So to my misguided colleagues, I say enough. Stop trying to reclaim the legacy of Korach and his fellow rebels. Let their memories remain where they belong, in the darkest, deepest, hottest depths of the earth. And so too, may their memories soon be joined by the memory of all those who claim white Christian superiority over all other colors and faiths. Not that I want them to perish and be swallowed up by the earth or by fire, but let their memories, let their call start falling on deaf ears. And let us realize who the true rebels are that we should be celebrating. Shabbat Shalom. Any questions, any comments? Yes, Rena, I can see people have things they want to say.
This is great. It's a great idea. You put it together wonderfully. There is something though that bothers me, and it's happened other times in the Torah where innocents seem to have been killed. Like it said that Korach and their kids and everybody. And then at one point you think it's just the 250 men, but it seems to be actually the whole family, little kids, innocents. And as I said, it's not the first time I've seen that. What do the rabbis say about that kind of thing?
So I've actually given drash on this in the past, and I've even worked with B'nai Mitzvah students when they have this parsha, because oftentimes people they hold on to it. It seems so unfair. I'm currently reading a series, novel series. It's a trilogy. I think only 2 of the books have come out so far. It's the Children of Blood and Bone. I don't know if anybody has heard of this series.
Who's it by?
It is. Yeah, it's
Who's it by?
Who's it by? I can't tell you. I'm so bad at that.
Blood and Bone.
The woman's a Nigerian American author, She's young. Like the first book came out when she was 23, and she's only like 25 now. She graduated from Harvard, and she's like the darling of literary world right now. But the book takes place in this kind of magical world in what is Nigeria, but it's not Nigeria. But either way, the whole concept is that there were this whole group of magi, and they were like the elders were all wiped out by the king, and all the children were spared. And the children didn't have any magic because supposedly the king wiped out magic. Well, it turns out magic wasn't completely wiped out. Now you've got these children who are now grew up 11 years later. They're of age. They have memories of seeing their parents die, and now they are leading a rebellion, right? That if there are people, oftentimes, like children don't necessarily realize that their parents were in the wrong, and they just know that their parents were killed, and now they want to be able to, avenge their parents' deaths. And so, what can happen is you have children who rise up and want to destroy this oppressive power, even without having to go to literature. Right? We can look at what is going on in Gaza. Right? You have plenty of soldiers whose parents were killed by Israel, and they want nothing more than to get vengeance on Israel. Now, I'm not advocating to say Israel should just wipe out everybody, but one can understand from a militaristic, strategic perspective the necessity of wiping out not just those who are the troublemakers, but even their progeny. Which is similar to the story of Amalek. Right? We have to wipe out Amalek and Amalek's memory. And when we spare Amalek's people, it gives rise to other people like Haman. And we keep this idea that people are going to want to keep avenging the wrongful death of their progenitors. So again, it's a lose-lose situation. Either you kill the children and you look like a terrible monster, or you spare the children and then they come back and they come to fight you again, and you're going to have to kill them later in war. I mean, it's nasty. But I don't think there's a right, and I don't think there's a right answer to the situation. I just think it's just an ugly situation. I think the only right answer would be for the rebels not to rebel in the first place, or at least people who were doing something wrong, not necessarily to act out wrong in the first place. But yeah, Jeff.
I say one of the struggles we have with Torah is that it's a black and white sort of narration, good and evil. You never hear Moses convincing them that they're wrong and having them repent. That option we don't usually get, particularly in Chumash. So I think that's where where Rabbinic Judaism has grown beyond biblical Judaism, where we start to talk about, well, we're going to have a discussion about it, and we're going to maybe convince the other side, and we'll preserve both Hillel and Shammai's opinion rather than just the black and white solutions in the biblical religion.
But we do have people repenting, right? I mean, here in the story, God tells Moses to tell the people, back away, right? Turn back from being led astray by these rebels, and plenty of people do. But it's the immediate family and the closest followers that are all punished. And it's so there is room for people to be able to make some tshuva. But yeah, Judy.
Well, if we don't look at this at all of Torah as literal stories, but things around which we can put our hands and understand, I see this as killing of Korach and all of those other people, even the children, as nipping it in the bud, as you said, not only so that it doesn't come back to bite you later, but because all of these things, these ideas, these ideals need to be toppled just like statues. And but not waiting until they get to be infectious, but getting them at the beginning of the pandemic.
And I think it's also dissuasive, right? That if somebody were to think about challenging, why the Kohanim in the future, or in any sort of, if there were to be any other type of rebellion and uprising, or to get people to really think twice before they start doing it, right? What could be the end result of this? And here you have a story. Well, if it turns out that you were on the wrong side of God and history, you and your children will all be wiped out. And so maybe it's not worth, even engaging in that fight unless you are certain that you are actually in the moral high ground. Carol Stein, yeah.
Hi. So back to your point about who was on the right side, it's interesting in chapter 16, 21. So when God says, he says twice, stand back so I can annihilate this community or these rebels. And the first time Aaron and Moses say they fell on their faces, and then they say, but wait a minute, are you going to kill off the whole community when only one man sins? Which is quite reminiscent of Abraham arguing about Sodom or Gomorrah.
Yeah.
But so right there, you see Moses and Aaron thinking of justice, not thinking of destruction. They're thinking of justice. Should the whole community die? And arguing with God in a moment of high tension. And so I think that supports your point also, that they're on the right side, on the justice side of the equation.
And and I think this would be like saying, okay, Hitler's going to be killed. Hitler's children are going to be killed, or at least let's put them, let's keep a very close watch on them and make sure they can't do anything. And every other, high commander under Nazi regime, they are all going to be put to death. It's this idea like the 250 rebels, but it doesn't say the families of the 250 rebels. Just those 250 rebels are consumed by fire, which also, not only does the story kind of harken to the story of Sodom and Amorah, but it also harkens to the story from Parshat Shmini, when Nadav and Avihu offer their strange fire in their fire pans, and they try to kind of step on their father's toes. And even there, they were warned, nobody should do this. Only the chosen people should be the ones who come here. And these 250 others are trying to encroach upon Aaron's once, and they still tried to fight against it. So they all were consumed. Not their children, not their wives, but just them. But yeah. Phyllis, you've been very yes.
Well, I was wondering about the plague because, as you said, that they were given the opportunity to back off, the community at large, to back off and make tshuva. But 14,000 people got killed until Moses, not on instructions from God, but on his own initiative, did the thing with the fire pans, running amongst the people to stop it. What's with that?
Well, we also have to remember, the week before, we also had another plague. Everybody was complaining about not having enough meat. And it's just everybody keeps complaining. And so I think we just see God. And by the way, God also said last week to Moses, we didn't read it, but it's in last week's Parsha, just let me kill all these people. That's what God said. Let me just kill them all. They're all just nudges. They all kvetch constantly. Let's just kill them all. And I'm going to start over with you, Moses, and with your children. And it might take us another few hundred years, but we'll get to the same place. And I think what we see here is God is just continuing to kind of thin the herd and try to get the people who are most worthy to enter into the land. Last week we also had it with the spies, and not only with people complaining about meat, right? They were complaining that they were afraid to be able to go into the land, to conquer the land. And even there, God says, okay, you are all going to die here in the desert. I'm not going to kill you right now, but you're all going to die here in the desert, except for Caleb and Yehoshua. The two of you will be able to live to go into, the land of Canaan. Well, everybody who was born in the wilderness is able to go into the land of Canaan. But anybody else who came out of Egypt, you're all going to die here in the wilderness. And so I think God is just trying to get rid of all these weak-spirited people and all those who are going to complain and undercut this Israelite, endeavor. So it's not pretty. There's a reason why they say God is a vengeful God, and that's why they refer to God in Shirat Hayam as Ish Milchama. God is a God of like a man of war, because it's bloody. Yeah, Lenny.
I wonder about the lack of repentance. I mean, we say before the test of the fire pans, God says, if I remember, I don't have the text in front of me, but you're going to be sorry. You guys are messing up and you're going to be sorry. This is a bad idea. And so you would think somebody with half a brain would say, well, this is God, sort of an authoritative figure. I should change my position. But yet at the very end of the whole story, of the 250 community leaders, not one of them has apparently repented, because all of them, it's not like 231 are consumed with fire, but 250 are consumed with fire. So that's kind of very strange, because if we put ourselves, into this story as if it were a literal story, we would think like, okay, I'm gonna, this might not be in my best interest to keep following this path of rebellion. What's your thought about all that?
Well, I think it's not just 254 people, right, who are these rebels, right? It's not just Nadav, Avihu, On, and Korach. Sorry, not Nadav and Avihu. Sorry, it's not just Datan, Aviram, On, and Korach, and these 250 others. They are the leaders, and they have followers. And so I think, I think there are plenty of followers who might kind of be going along with it and say, oh, maybe this isn't actually a smart path for me to be on, and maybe I just got swept up in all the excitement of this movement, and these people talk a really good game, and I felt at first it didn't seem right what I was witnessing, but now I kind of realize maybe it actually is right, with the vision that God had in choosing Moses and Aaron and all that. All right, so those people have that opportunity to get away. But if you are like a leader of a movement, how often do you have leaders who really are there almost toward the very end, who then finally, back away and make true repentance at that point? If anything, they're only backing away because they're making some sort of, plea deal where they are throwing everybody else under the bus and trying to save themselves. And that's not really what's being presented here. Those people are fighting to the end.
Okay. I'll buy that. So about the 14,000 people, we don't really say how, we don't hear how those people were selected, because the plague started and then Aaron made expiation and then the plague ended. But at this time, over 14,000 people died. Do we think that those 14,000 people were the followers of those four, or were they just random, like they didn't get out of the way in time? Who are those people?
I personally think those are followers. I think those are people who, and even if they weren't explicit followers, God is bocher levavot, choker klayot. God can see into the depths of our hearts and our kidneys, which kidneys were considered seat of knowledge. So it's strange. God's just a nephrologist, I guess. But this idea is that even if these people weren't active leaders, God understood who would be those who we need to be most wary of, and maybe who needed to be removed from the midst of the people, not to infect others. Yeah, David, you have an insight. I
think so. I think there's, to Leonard's question, there is like a second wave of the problem that Moses sets up a test for who is actually God's chosen agent. And instead of that test proving what seems obvious, that Moses and Aaron are the agents, the people, Ha'am, everyone else who witnessed all this, decide to blame Moses and Aaron for the deaths of those other people, and that they didn't bring it on themselves by their rebellion, that Moses and Aaron wiped them out as if they were competition in some way. And so everybody who's taken that perspective is in a way so hopeless that they can't learn from their experience. Then what's the point in going on to the land of Israel in a certain way? So everybody who can't learn is guilty in a certain sense, perhaps.
And I think and Jaime, we'll get to you in a second, and then we're going to have to conclude the service as well because it's just the timing. But Dave, I think just to piggyback on what you're saying, and also I think Judy was saying before, right? We shouldn't be looking at the text literally, as Rambam tells us. We should view it as metaphor and parable. And even if God didn't necessarily kill those people directly, but if all those people were defectors and they said, this is not the journey that we want to be on, we don't support Moses and Aaron, and Moses and Aaron say, well, if you're not on board, then goodbye. If you had random people wandering in the desert alone and not part of a larger military structure with those protections, you're as good as dead anyways. And so, get on board and survive and thrive, or don't, and you're going to flounder and die. Yeah, Jaime, you're going to have our last comments here, and then
okay.
Aleinu.
It's one thing to recognize that when any act of violence occurs, whether justified or not, there's going to be collateral damage, and quite often the collateral damage far exceeds the original violence. But to justify the killing of, well, we say children, but not necessarily children, the killing of people because at some point in the future they might commit evil, is something that all of our souls should rebel against. In fact, getting to contemporary times, so sometimes the actions of police are exactly that they are reacting and punishing and inappropriately restraining people for what they think they might do, not for what they've actually done. And, I think we should all be on board with that.
Yeah, that is, I think, it's probably one of the grayest areas of the story, that no option is really a good option. And the best option is to give folks the benefit of the doubt and just to remain vigilant if there are troubles that start presenting themselves. But I think that's a much more sophisticated, more modern approach than something from 3,200 years ago. So we're going to turn back into our Sidurim now. We're going to thank you, everybody, for your comments and contribution. It was really wonderful. I'm glad we have this format that we can be more participatory. We're on page 205 with Aleinu. Invite you to rise if you wish to do so. And Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula liotzer breshit, shelo asanu kugei haratzot, v'lo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, u'mishtachavim u'modim, lifnei melech malchei hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shehu Notei Shamayim ve'yosed haaretz, u'moshev yekaro b'shamayim ima'al, u'shchinatu zo, v'govhei meromim, u'Eloheinu einod, emet malkeinu efes zulato, kakatuv b'torato, Yadata hayom lahashivota el levavecha. Ki Adonai hu Elohim בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת, אין עוד, אין עוד. כך כתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. We turn to page 207 for the Mourner's Kaddish, Kaddish Yatom. This Shabbat we lovingly are recalling the memory of Bernard S. Bennett. It's actually Sue Bennett's father. I spoke with Sue the other day. She does not have internet access, and so she's not able to be with us, and she's missing services. But I told her that we'd be saying Kaddish for her father, and so just invite you all to imagine that Sue is here with us as she would be saying Kaddish. Abraham Ryder, the father of Marilyn Lewitt. Miriam Kaplan, Sue, your friend. William Weissler, father of Eric Weissler. Eva Luria, Ken's mother. And Bina Milstein, Jaime, your mother. So all those have a need or desire to say Kaddish. Invite you, just like last week, if you yourself are saying Kaddish, invite you to unmute yourself. Actually, everybody can unmute yourselves if you wish, unless there's a lot of noise in the background. But either way, that way we can say Amen to one another, and it'll be cacophonous as we say Kaddish Yatom together, but at least we're saying it to one another. Kadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah. Te v'yamar v'yomechon v'yeh dechol beit
Yisrael. Amen.
Yitbarach Eila min tush b'chata v'nekamata damiran b'yama v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'romav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. The one who makes peace in the heavens above, make peace for us, for all of Israel, and for all of humanity, and let us say, Amen. All right, so just a few other things to know. We have just a handful of birthdays this week. So today is Yosef Funke's birthday. And I understand Yosef and Aviva and the boys are on a little RV road trip right now celebrating. Tomorrow is Ari Lakis Malamud's birthday. So happy birthday, Ari. Then tomorrow is also David Adam Roth's birthday. And then on Thursday is Orly Bohadana. Orly is one of our teachers and used to work in the office. It's her birthday. Thursday also happens to be my father's birthday. And it's a big one for him. So happy birthday to all who are celebrating. And then finally, and I guess next Saturday is our country's birthday, so that's a big one too. And then we have a number of anniversaries this week. So so today is Helena and David Hershkowitz's anniversary, 55 years. Monday is Ellen and Stephen Mark celebrating 38 years. Then on Tuesday, Melissa Tarsky's parents, Sandy and Gerson, they are celebrating their 57th anniversary. And on next Friday, Miriam and Michael Miller are celebrating their 42nd anniversary. So happy anniversary to them. And as we have the custom of sharing simcha, does anybody want to share? Sue Foxhorn, please.
Yes, well, yesterday, it's a little late, was my son-in-law Carlos's birthday, and Tuesday is my granddaughter Mariana's 3rd birthday coming up.
Very sweet. Wonderful. Others? Yes, Cindy, Madam President, you have to unmute yourself. Cindy?
Into my checking account was my personal PPP loan, more than $12,000. Amazing. Amazing. I got it.
We were joking the other day how fun it is. Cindy's just gonna have to make sure that she keeps herself employed for the near future to make sure she doesn't have to repay any of that PPP. So we hope we can trust you to keep yourself employed. Other simchas. Yes, Brett.
So I been participating. I usually just I have the video off. But in the last week, I was talking to my sister who lives in St. Louis, and she was telling me how she's missing Shabbat services. I say, well, I go every week to my synagogue services, and she was interested. So I said, well, you can join our service. So she's now, you can see her video. That's my sister Hedva from St. Louis, Missouri. I saw your mom from
Something's
Cleveland.
wrong with my video,
So
but hi.
That's my sister Hedva. So
Hedva, in St. Louis, I was reading that there's a Reform synagogue and a conservative synagogue that are. Oh no, sorry, no, that's in North Carolina. I was just reading about this is in St. Louis that there's a move to pull down the statue of King Louis IX because
That's St. Louis.
St. Louis, yes.
Yeah, it's in front of our art museum, and it's amazing what they're talking about. But thank you for letting me join today. It was wonderful.
It's great having another. I assume you're born Baron-Holtz. I don't know if you still go by Baron-Holtz or not, but it's good having.
Professionally, I do. Baron-Holtz Levy, and hopefully I'll join you again. So thank you.
Bezrat Hashem, God willing. Any other simchas? Yes, ma'am. You have to unmute yourself. Still have to unmute yourself. You push it twice. There you go.
Sorry. Just wanted to congratulate you on your anniversary of your bar mitzvah. And 27 years later, it was a little different.
27, yeah. Long time. A little different. I think I have a video of my drash in the service up in the mezzanine here at Mishkan. So I just have to, I have to find a VCR to be able to play it, but I'm very curious what I actually drashed on that day. But but yes, I do know that I am definitely dressed far less formally today than I was 27 years ago. Any other simchas that we're sharing this Shabbat? No. All right, then I want to turn it over to Cindy, Madam President, with some brief announcements, I guess.
Good Shabbos. Today, we were delighted to have Rabbi Stein declaiming Torah for us. Thank you. And thank you to Rabbi Botnick for, again, his tour de force Shabbos services every week from our sanctuary. This week, we sent out reminders about our High Holy Days survey to all our members and to non-members who have been involved with Mishkan for the holidays. If you haven't filled out your survey, please do so after Shabbat. And whether you have filled it out or not, forward it to any guests that you had for the holidays so that they can fill it out too. Tomorrow morning at 11 is a special Zoom class. Author and psychologist Leonard Felder will be talking about mindfulness methods for when relatives or friends disagree about politics or religion. You can get the Zoom one click from the messenger or from our website. The following Zoom classes continue this week. Stephanie Avedon's yoga tomorrow morning at 9. Rachel Can's Zumba Monday morning at 10. Rabbi Dan's Prophets Monday evening at 7:30. Rabbi Botnick's Torah study Tuesday afternoon at 2. And Barbara's book club Tuesday. I have Tuesday evening at 7, but they may have been last week. I'm not sure.
Last week. It was last week.
Last week. Okay, good. Skip Barbara's book club. Do not go on Tuesday evening at 7. Check the messenger or the website for more information and the Zoom one click. And Jill and Bruce Kobritz have a new grandchild, Jonathan. Now you can imagine that we are going downstairs for a yummy kiddish and schmoozing, followed by hugs and kisses before we all leave for home. From my mouth to God's ear, as they say. Good Shabbos.
Shabbat shalom, toda rabba. So, this weekend, right, so all of this month is Pride Month, but this weekend normally would be Pride for us as well. This actually would be the 50th Pride here in Los Angeles and up in San Francisco. So, of course, all the Pride celebration has gone online. But either way, we're going to sing a melody for Adon Olam, page 211, that maybe not like the greatest representation, but definitely is a recognizable melody that one would hear at some Pride festivities this weekend. Adon Olam, Asher Malach B'Terem Kol, Yitzir Nivra Li'et Nasa, B'Chefzo Kol Azai Melech Shmo Nikra, V'Yacharei Kichlot HaKol Livado, Yimloch Nora V'Hu Haya, V'Hu Hoveh V'Hu Yeh B'Tifara. Boom, 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 boom. V'Hu Echad V'Ein Sheni, L'Hamshir Lo L'Hachvira. B'li Reshit, B'li Tachlit, V'Lo Ha'oz V'Hamisra, V'Hu Eli, V'Chai Go'ali, V'Tzur Chavli, V'Eit Tzara, V'Hu Nisi, Umanos li menakosi b'yom ekra v'yado, afkid ruchi v'eit ishan, v'ya'ira v'imruchi, geviati Adonai li v'lo ira. Dun, 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 dun. It's fun to stay at the JCC. I have to make it a bit more Jewish. All right. Shabbat shalom, everybody. Feel free to unmute yourselves and you can sit and